welcome back to Cruising as Crew. As you can see and probably hear, I am on board my new cruise ship in my new cabin, which is cozy. Yeah, so we're going to talk about 10 challenges that crew members face when working on a cruise ship today, but before we get into it, I'll just give you a little update. So embarkation day went well. Obviously, you know, medical was fine, all the documents were fine, was, you know, on board, but I will say it's hard. I had really forgotten what it was like to be brand new, because even when I was like starting another contract on Virgin, I knew the layout of the ships, I recognised a lot of the people, so it wasn't like new, but I really did forget what it was like to have a proper first day where you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going, you don't know where your cabin is, you don't know how like the cabin numbers work, like nothing makes sense. And then the watertight doors close, so the route that you found to your cabin, you're like, oh, okay, I have to be somewhere in 5 minutes, but the watertight doors closed, this is great. And just not knowing anybody, like it's a lot. So yeah, I am back to square one in some ways, in that I just yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on half the time. However, what I will say is I'm very impressed so far. Here, everyone's been so friendly, so helpful. The trainings have been overwhelming. They always are, no matter what cruise line you go on. You are given safety training, job training, environmental training, cultural awareness training. Like, I mean, every training that you can imagine you're given in like your first few days. So there's a lot. And you know, like I went to the mess and yesterday, and I found my way there, and I was like, okay, great. And then today I'm like, I swear the mess was here yesterday and I can't find it today. So it's been challenging. Also, what I will say is there's no free internet on this ship, so not being connected is interesting. That's something I haven't experienced for a long time. But again, it's just something to get used to. But I'm happy, I'm in good spirits, everyone's been lovely so far. I've moved into my cabin, it's cozy, but it's my own space. It's the same setup as Virgin, so I showed you my Virgin cabin. It's like a Jack and Jill setup, so this space is my own. It's probably about like 1.5 meters square. Yeah, about 1.5 meters squared. So there's a little bit more floor space than the one I had on Virgin, a little bit more, and then I share a bathroom with someone who is on the other side, who I haven't met yet because I think she's in a different department. But yeah, so I mean, I'm just happy I have my own space again. You know, we've talked a lot on this channel about sharing a cabin, and you know, it can be great, but it can also be difficult. And you know, the beauty of having your own cabin is you can have the lights on, you can put the telly on, and you don't have to, you know, worry that you're going to offend someone or wake someone up, or you know. But yeah, anyway, just a little update. All going well. Thank you for all of your well wishes, your good luck wishes. You know, I really appreciate them. I love you all so much, and you know, I just thank you for your support. Like, yeah, thank you so much. But anyway, let's get into this video. Because I have about half an hour to film this video and then I have to go, so let's get into it. So the first challenge that new crew members face is living in a confined space with a roommate. So as I just told you, my cabin is 1 meter squared. It is, or 1.5 meters squared. It's very small, very compact, and it can be challenging if you're having to share a confined space like with someone, and they're probably from a different part of the world from you, different cultures, different backgrounds, maybe there's a language barrier. So you know, it can be really difficult. And unfortunately, the roommate situation is like 50% luck and 50% your ability to manage people. So I mean, you might get really unlucky and, you know, get someone who is untidy and I don't know, maybe they're a bit smelly, but you might get really lucky and get someone who's very tidy, very respectful, very quiet, to have a good rapport with. And we've spoken a lot about like roommate situations before. Just because you're best friends with someone does not mean that they're going to make a good roommate. Like, a roommate relationship is more about compatibility than your personalities meshing well. One of my best friends, she is the messiest person I know. I love her to death, I would do anything for her, but oh my god, I could not live with her in a cabin that was this size. I would kill her, and she would kill me also, because I'd constantly be telling her to clean up. So do you see what I mean? Whereas, you know, I'm tidy, I like things organised, so my ideal roommate would be someone who also likes things organised and tidy. And then, like I said, the other 50% is like your ability to manage people. So you might get, you know, not the best roommate. However, if you're good with people and you're good at like sussing out situations and you're a good communicator, that goes a long way to having a healthy rapport and relationship with your roommate. Sorry if you can hear rumbling, we are currently leaving the port, so. Now what I will say is sharing a cabin, having a roommate is the number one thing that I get asked about. It is the number one thing that people are really trepidatious about before coming and working on board cruise ships. So I have done a career guide just on sharing a cabin with a roommate, and in there I give you all the information. I even give you, you know, word for word things that you can say to your roommate in difficult situations, the conversation that you need to have when you move in or when they move in. So if you are worried about having a roommate on a cruise ship, then definitely go and get that career guide. I think it's one of the $10 ones, but honestly, you know, if it means that you have a good relationship with the person that you're going to live with, it will be the best $10 that you ever spent. The second challenge that crew members face is keeping personal and professional separate. So you are going to socialise with the people that you work with, and it is very normal that at times you will get frustrated with the people that you work with, because you spend all day with these people, all day, every day with these people. But as I said, these are generally also the people that you are going to enjoy your off time with, because you get to know these people the fastest because you spend so much time together. And when you are on your off time, it's very difficult not to talk about work, because that's your main joint experience together. But I really would urge you to try and not do this, because if you are talking about work the whole time that you are not in work, you're never gonna feel like you've had a break. You're gonna feel like you are constantly working. So it's very important that you make an effort to only talk about work when you're in work, but also vice versa. You only want to be talking about your personal life in your personal time. Like, you don't want to be bringing that into work. And I know it's difficult, but trust me, it makes a difference to your like mental health, to the environment at work. And sometimes it's really easy to let that professionalism slip and just have like a quick conversation with your colleague about the guy you're seeing, or a fight with, you know, a roommate or something like that. However, once those lines become blurred, it's hard to separate them again. And as I said, if you talk about work when you're not in work, you're going to feel like you're constantly at work. And also, talking about your personal life while you're at work is completely unprofessional. And the thing on a cruise ship is you never know who's listening. There are, I mean, depending on your job, there are guests. It's not sailors anymore, it's guests. There are guests around. There might be other crew around that, you know, you don't want them to hear your conversation. So you do just have to be mindful of who you're talking to, but also who is in earshot. So for multiple reasons, it's really important that you keep professional and personal separate. However, it is one of the biggest challenges you will face, especially on your first contract, because it's so easy for those lines to cross. The third thing is language barriers. So on most cruise ships you have between like 60 and 70 different nationalities working on board. That's generally a lot of different languages in one small environment. And also that's a lot of different accents. I have spoke about my experience in the Bahamas and how I found it really difficult to understand the Bahamian accent, and you know what, it's no different. I have come here and I've sat in maybe about 10 trainings now, all about 2-3 hours long. That's an exaggeration, but you know, I've sat through a lot of trainings now, and you know, first it's a Scottish person, and then it's a Spanish person, and then it's a Croatian person, and then it's a Brazilian, like Portuguese speaking teacher. So you know, you're constantly having to like, okay, right, so you're not only having to take in the information, you're also having to like really pay attention because the accents are so thick. And again, I feel very fortunate because on cruise ships they speak English, and English is my first language, but I'm with other new joiners, and one girl, she's so wonderful, she is from Argentina, and she's like, this isn't my first language, I have no idea what anyone's saying. And I'm like, I get it, I have been there very recently. So I am doing, you know, we're all doing what we can do to help her understand, but it's difficult. And you know, especially when there's so much information to take in when you first get on board, and half of it is literally lost in translation. If you're going on a cruise ship soon, or if you have just started your contract, I hope that you take comfort in the fact that I'm saying that, like, I'm an English speaker and this is my like 100th contract. So if I'm saying that it's difficult, like, it's difficult. And last night, in fact, I was really, I guess, beating myself up. I was like, you know, you should be better, you should get this faster, you should know more because you've been on ships for so long. But then I had to stop myself because I was like, I wouldn't talk to someone else like this. You know, if anyone else had said they're having a hard time understanding it, I'd be like, yeah, it's difficult. So I think I just need to cut myself some slack. But it is definitely a challenge that I am re-experiencing. Number 4, the long hours. I have spoke about this multiple times before. You guys know, if you work on a cruise ship, you work long hours. However, it is still a shock to the system. It doesn't matter how much you watch my videos, how much people tell you about the fact that you'll be working long hours when you come on board a cruise ship. That's a shock. So this morning I started my day at 5:45. I will finish my day at about 9 p.m. Obviously I've got, you know, a break in the middle, so I don't go over my like MLC working hour requirements, so don't worry, everything's fine. You know, I'm not, but it's a long day. It's a long day nevertheless. Even though I could have a nap in the middle of the day, it's a lot. As I've said, cruise ships is another world, and I've entered the other world and I'm adjusting, and it's a lot. So, you know, my feet are hurting. I am using muscles that I haven't used in a long time. I said to myself that when I got on board, I was gonna just use the stairs. I didn't want to get into the habit of using elevators. So my quads are hurting quite a lot because I haven't walked up this many stairs in months. But again, it's that adjustment period. So I'm trying to cut myself some slack, and I would advise that you cut yourself some slack, because the long hours mixed with all the information that you have to take in when you first get on board, it's a lot. Number 5 is the constant change. I'll give you an example. So last night we were due to leave port at 5 p.m. We left port, there was a medical emergency, all fine, she was okay, but there was a medical emergency, so we had to come back into port, which means that we actually leave a lot later. That means that all the shows, all the seminars, the shop opening times, the restaurants, everything changes. So just because of that one medical emergency, I would say probably 70% of the crew members' schedules changed slightly. So you have to get really good with just rolling with the punches and being resilient. You can't get too comfortable with your schedule, because the ship might leave late, the ship might get into port early, there might be a storm, a medical emergency, rough seas, one of your colleagues is sick, so that means that you might have to cover them or do their job or whatever. So things are just changing all the time. So you will be given a schedule, however, follow it loosely. Well, follow it closely, but, you know, expect it to change at some point. Number 6 is homesickness, and this is very apparent in your first week on board because of all the things we've just spoke about. Long hours, you're knackered, there's a lot of information, you're feeling overwhelmed, and also you don't know anyone. Like, most likely during your first week you probably haven't had a chance to make any real connections because you've just been in training, so it can be quite lonely, and you know, you miss your family, you don't have a lot of time to call your family. So during that, it can either go one or two ways. Like, either you get on board and you're so excited, so raring to go, and you're so busy that you don't even think about your family, and then when it like slows down a little bit, then you're like, oh. Or like me, I've got on board, I have no idea what's going on, what I'm doing, and although everyone has been lovely, I'm like, oh, I wish my mum was here, I wish my gran was here, you know, or I wish I could just see my friend and have a coffee and have a chat, but I can't. And it'll be fine because, you know, I've done this before, and I know that in a few weeks I will have made some friends and this will start to feel like home, and it'll be fine. But homesickness is another challenge that is really difficult to deal with. And, you know, I would say just speak to your family and friends as much as you can. It's difficult, there will be a time difference, you will probably have to pay for internet, but just do it. Like, if you're having a really hard time when you first get on board, and speaking to your mom or speaking to your friend is going to put you at ease, just pay the money. Just have that phone call and hopefully you will feel a bit better. Number 7 is one that I mentioned earlier and is happening to me a lot during my first few days on board. I'm getting lost all of the time, and it's really difficult on a ship because there's splash tight doors, there's watertight doors, certain corridors are closed for maintenance. So you get on board, you just manage to find a route to work or to the mess, and then, you know, when the ship sets sail, the watertight doors are closed, and all of a sudden that route that you found is no longer available. So you have to find a different route, and it's really stressful when you're in a rush. So my advice would be, if you have to be somewhere at 9 o'clock, you want to leave your cabin at 20 minutes to 9, even if it's a 2-minute walk. Because I've been doing this, I'm like, right, I have to go to training, it's literally like 3 minutes away, 3 decks up, 3 minutes away. I timed it took me 18 minutes to get there this morning because the watertight doors were shut, and then one of the hallways was X'd off because a door was being fixed or something. So I was like, ah! Now, I'm, you know, very lucky on cruise ships, and especially this cruise ship, everyone's very happy to help and, you know, guide you in the right direction. There's always someone that you're going to be able to ask and who will be able to guide you in the right direction. However, it's stressful. It is stressful not knowing where you're going and not remembering where things are, not being able to get your bearings. Something I'm learning, having been on 4 cruise lines now, is every cruise line does things very differently. Every ship, although you would think follows a similar plan, does not at all. And, you know, there are things that I'm like, oh, on Virgin Voyages that was, you know, so much easier to understand, but then I have to be like, well, because you'd been there for 3 years. Like, when I first got on board, it was just as confusing on Virgin as it is here. So I just hope that after a few weeks I'll be. Number 8 is the internet situation. So we live in a world now where pretty much everywhere you go you are able to be connected to Wi-Fi or mobile data or whatever. So coming on a cruise ship, really can feel like you are stepping back in time, because you're not always connected to internet, and if you do want to be connected to internet, then you have to pay the premium. And even when you pay the premium to get internet access, it's not the best. You know, it allows you to send WhatsApp messages, maybe send some pictures and videos, and, you know, do stuff like that, but I can't upload a YouTube video. You won't be able to download anything, you know. And sometimes when you call your family and friends using the ship internet, it's really crackly and it cuts out, and which can be very frustrating, especially if you're, you know, really missing home and you're like, I really need this call with, you know, my loved one, and the internet is just not helping. So not having constant access to good internet, I find a real challenge. And I know that, you know, a lot of other crew members do too, especially when it's their first contract and they're not used to not having internet access. It can be a real shock to the system. And then going on from that, number 9 is, you know, strained personal relationships. So while, you know, you will come on a cruise ship, you will make amazing friends, you're going to meet people from all over the world. Like, it's going to be the best thing you ever do. I promise that. However, it is going to be difficult for your loved ones at first. Of course it's going to be difficult for you, but also for them, because if it's your first time away, especially, because they're going to be used to having you there. They're going to be used to you having constant internet access, so being able to get hold of you whenever. So sometimes family and friends don't understand why they can't get hold of you, you know. And when you say, oh, I don't have any internet, especially in 2023, it's like, what do you mean you don't have internet? Like, just turn you know, like, people don't get it. People don't get that you're literally on a ship in the middle of the sea, and when you say you don't have internet, you don't have internet. When I was in the Bahamas, I actually met a couple who watched my channel, because he worked on ships and she stayed at home while he did a contract away, and she was like, your channel really helped, because when he would tell me that he couldn't get internet access, there was a part of me that was like, really? And she said, so it was really comforting to watch your channel, and you were like, no, you don't have access to internet. I was like, oh, I'm glad, you know, you found comfort in it. But honestly, it can be really difficult for your friends and family to understand that you're offline and you're at work constantly. Not constantly, but you know what I mean. You're working a lot more than you usually are. So this can strain personal relationships. So it's your job, I think, before you go on board, to help them to understand what you're going into, which can be difficult, because if you haven't been on a ship before, you yourself don't really know what you're going into. But what you can say is, hey, from what I've seen on Cruising as Crew, or what I've read, or what the cruise line has told me, I'm not going to have access to internet all the time. I'm going to be working long hours. I'm going to be based in America or Europe, so there's going to be a time difference. So this is what you can expect. And half the time I find, if people set their expectations correctly, the transition is a lot smoother. Whereas if your friends and family are expecting that they're still going to have access to you all the time, and likewise, if you're expecting that you're going to have access to them all the time, it's going to make it really difficult. So I hope this isn't a challenge that you experience, but strained personal relationships for those reasons is something that a lot of new crew members can go through. And then number 10 is never being able to switch off. So I have spoke about this before. It's definitely something you get used to, but the example I give is, let's say you work in a restaurant at home. You're a waitress or a waiter in a restaurant at home. When you're at work, you are on. But as soon as you leave that restaurant, as long as you're not the manager or anything, you switch off, and that's it. You can forget about work. It's done. Whereas on a cruise ship, you're always on. Obviously, when you go to work, you're fully on the ball. However, when you finish your shift, you can't fully turn off for a few reasons. You're on a cruise ship and there are guests everywhere. So if a guest comes up to you and says, hey, can you help me find the medical centre, or hey, can you help me find this restaurant, or answer this question, it's not acceptable for you to say, oh, sorry, I finished my shift. Like, you still have to help them, no matter if you're on or off. And then the other reason is the safety aspect. So a lot of the training when you get on board will be safety related, and what they tell you is right. And you know, there can be a safety issue happen at any time. There could be a fire at 2 in the morning, there could be a collision at 6 in the morning or 12 in the afternoon, and every crew member has a safety duty. So you can never fully switch off, because if something happens, you have to be able to spring into action. And that's, you know, another reason why the drinking limit is at 8.08, and you know why they have a drinking limit on cruise ships, because if you're blackout drunk and there's a fire and we have to abandon ship, not only are you not going to be able to report for duty and do it successfully, they're probably going to have to send other crew members to look for you if you're passed out in your cabin because you're drunk. So not being able to switch off is definitely a challenge if you're not used to it. But as I said, you do get used to it and you learn how to manage it. But anyway, I hope you have found those 10 things helpful. Those are the 10 challenges that new crew members face when they start their job on cruise ships. I felt that it was quite fitting, since I am a new crew member on this cruise line. Not a new crew member, I am new to this cruise line. So I'm going through all of these challenges with you. I have to go, I have to leave now, because as I said, I need to leave 20 minutes before I actually have to be at the venue, because I still don't know my way around. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, whatever you decide to do. Thank you so much for watching, and if you do want help with the whole roommate situation, make sure you go to cruisinuscrew.com and download my roommate career guide, and I will see you in the next video, guys. Thank you so much. Mwah.